Before we start, if you're enjoying these stories from the field, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps more than you know. And I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's talk about the Grand Canyon and why some rangers never come back from Zone 7. My name is Jake Morrison, and I used to be a park ranger at Grand Canyon National Park. I say used to be because after what happened in 2006, I couldn't go back. Not to the canyon, not to any national park. Some places change you in ways you can't explain to people who weren't there. I was 28 years old when I got the transfer to Grand Canyon. It was a dream posting, the kind every ranger works toward their entire career. I'd spent 5 years at smaller parks in Colorado and Utah, paying my dues, building my reputation. When the call came, offering me a position at one of the crown jewels of the National Park Service, I didn't hesitate. The orientation was standard. Maps, regulations, wildlife protocols, search and rescue procedures. Chief Ranger Thomas Whitmore ran through everything with the efficiency of someone who'd given the same speech hundreds of times. He was in his early 60s, weathered and lean, with the kind of face that had spent decades under the Arizona sun. Everything was routine until he got to the map. "This is your patrol sector," he said, pointing to a section of the South Rim marked as Zone 7. "It's remote, sees fewer visitors than the main trails. You'll be doing regular patrols, checking permits, making sure hikers stay on designated paths." I studied the map. Zone 7 covered about 15 square miles of canyon territory, including several overlooks and 2 trails that descended partway into the canyon. It looked straightforward enough. "Any particular concerns I should know about?" I asked. Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Zone 7 has some restricted areas. They're clearly marked. Under no circumstances do you enter those restricted zones. Not for any reason. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." "What's the reason for the restrictions?" "Unstable geology, rockfall danger. The areas are unsafe and off-limits to everyone, including rangers." It was a reasonable explanation, but the way he said it felt rehearsed, like he'd given that answer many times before and had it down to a script. "Understood. Anything else?" He paused, studying me for a moment. "Jake, Zone 7 is different from other patrol areas. You'll notice things. Unusual sounds, strange echoes, hikers reporting odd experiences. It's the canyon playing tricks. The geology here creates acoustic phenomena that can be disorienting. Don't let it get to you. Acoustic phenomena. Echoes mostly. Sound bounces in unexpected ways. Hikers sometimes report hearing voices, footsteps, that sort of thing. It's just the canyon, nothing to worry about." I nodded, but I was curious now. "Has anyone ever gotten hurt in Zone 7? "Not recently," Whitmore said, which wasn't really an answer. "You'll be fine as long as you follow protocols. Stay out of the restricted areas, file your reports on time, and if you see anything unusual, document it and report it to me directly. Not to dispatch, not to other rangers. Directly to me." That was odd, but I didn't push. I was new, eager to prove myself. I wasn't going to start questioning procedures on my first day. My first week was uneventful. Zone 7 was beautiful in a stark, isolated way. The overlooks offered views that took your breath away. Endless layers of red rock descending into shadows that seemed to go on forever. The trails were well maintained, but quiet. I'd go entire days seeing maybe 3 or 4 hikers total. The restricted areas were clearly marked with signs that read, "Danger, unstable rock, area closed, violators will be prosecuted." Heavy chains blocked the trails that led into those sections. Most were side canyons or narrow passages that split off from the main paths. On my 8th day, I met the only other ranger who regularly worked Zone 7. Her name was Linda Reeves, and she'd been at the canyon for 12 years. She was in her early 40s, competent and professional, but there was something guarded about her. We ran into each other at Shoshone Point, one of the more remote overlooks. She was sitting on a rock, eating a sandwich and staring out at the canyon. "You're the new guy," she said as I approached. "Morrison, right?" "Jake. Yeah, started last week." "How are you finding Zone 7? "Quiet, beautiful. A little eerie when you're alone, but that's probably just me getting used to it." Linda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's not just you. Zone 7 has a particular feel to it. You'll get used to that, too." Whitmore mentioned acoustic phenomena, echoes and stuff. Did he? It wasn't a question. "Yeah, you'll hear things. Voices sometimes. Footsteps. I've heard my name called out here when there wasn't another soul for miles. Like the chief said, it's just the canyon." "You don't sound convinced." She looked at me for a long moment like she was deciding something. "Jake, how long have you been a ranger?" 5 years. Ever work anywhere with, let's call them, unusual characteristics?" "I worked a season in Yellowstone. Saw some strange thermal activity, but nothing supernatural, if that's what you're asking." "That's exactly what I'm asking. Do you believe in things that can't be explained?" I shrugged. I believe there's usually a scientific explanation for things that seem weird at first. Linda nodded slowly. "Good. Hold on to that, you're going to need it out here." Before I could ask what she meant, her radio crackled. She answered it, exchanged a few words with dispatch, then stood up. "I've got to head back. Visitor incident at Mather Point. But Jake, a word of advice, keep a log. Document everything you see and hear, even if it seems insignificant. And whatever you do, don't go into the restricted areas. There's a reason they're closed." Whitmore said unstable rock. "Sure," Linda said, not meeting my eyes. "Unstable rock. That's the official reason." She left before I could ask what the unofficial reason was. That night, I started a personal log, separate from my official ranger reports. I didn't know why exactly, but Linda's warning had gotten under my skin. If there was something unusual about Zone 7, I wanted to track it properly. Day 8, uneventful patrol. Hikers reported hearing echoes that seemed to come from the wrong direction. Checked the area, found nothing unusual. Probably just acoustic effects as described in training. Day 12, strange incident at Yaqui Point. Hiker claimed he saw someone standing on a ledge about 200 feet down. When I checked with binoculars, there was no ledge there. The rock face was sheer at that point. Hiker seemed genuinely shaken, attributed it to heat exhaustion, and escorted him back to rim. Day 15. Heard my name called while on patrol near the restricted section of Horseshoe Mesa. Voice sounded exactly like my sister, who lives in Oregon. When I turned around, no one was there. Made note of time and location. 2:47 p.m. Day 19. Found a hat on the trail near the restricted zone boundary. Standard hiking hat, fairly new, no identification inside. Turned it in to Lost and Found. Dispatcher made a note that this was the third unidentified item found in Zone 7 this month. Nothing dramatic, but a pattern was emerging. Zone 7 was weird. Not dangerous exactly, but off, like the normal rules didn't quite apply there. On day 21, I found the uniform. I was doing a routine patrol of the Tonto Trail where it passed through Zone 7. The trail was empty, which wasn't unusual for a Tuesday in September. I was about 2 miles in when I saw something that didn't belong. On a flat rock about 20 feet off the trail, in a small clearing surrounded by pinyon pines, was a park ranger uniform, not crumpled or discarded, but folded. Perfectly folded, like someone had taken great care to arrange it just so. The shirt was on top, arms crossed over the chest. Beneath it was the pants, legs aligned. Beside the uniform were a pair of boots, laces tied, positioned as if someone had just stepped out of them. A ranger's hat sat on top of the shirt, and next to everything was a name tag. I approached slowly, my hand unconsciously moving to my radio. Something about the scene felt wrong, staged almost, but also deeply unsettling. The name tag read, Ranger Gwen Mitchell. I didn't recognize the name, but that didn't mean anything. The park had over 400 employees. I radioed it in. "Dispatch, this is Morrison in Zone 7. I've found what appears to be a ranger uniform, folded and arranged on a rock near Tonto Trail. Name tag says Gwen Mitchell. Can you confirm if we have a ranger by that name?" There was a long pause. Too long. "Stand by, Morrison." I waited, staring at the uniform. It looked old, but well-preserved. The fabric had faded in a way that suggested years of sun exposure, but there were no tears, no damage. Just a uniform that had been carefully removed and left behind. The radio crackled. "Morrison, Chief Whitmore is en route to your location. Do not touch the uniform. Do not move it. Wait for the chief." "Copy that. What about Gwen Mitchell? Is she, just wait for the chief?" It took Whitmore 40 minutes to reach me, which meant he'd driven fast and hiked faster. He arrived with Linda Reeves and a ranger I didn't recognize, a younger guy who looked pale and nervous. Whitmore stood over the uniform, his face unreadable. He took several photographs with a digital camera, careful to capture every angle. Then he picked up the name tag, studied it, and put it in an evidence bag. "Jake, I need you to tell me exactly what you saw, where you were, what time it was," Whitmore said. I gave him a detailed account. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Has anyone touched this? Moved anything?" "No, sir." I radioed as soon as I saw it. "Good." He turned to the other ranger. "Carter, get the rest." Carter pulled a folded bag from his pack and began carefully placing the uniform inside. His hands were shaking. "Chief, who's Gwen Mitchell?" I asked. Whitmore looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something in his expression that might have been fear. "Gwen Mitchell was a ranger here. She disappeared 7 years ago." 7 years. The uniform looked old, but not 7 years old. It looked like it had been placed there yesterday. Where did she disappear? Zone 7, on the Tonto Trail. Not far from here, actually. The same place, the same area. My skin prickled. "Did you ever find out what happened to her?" "No." Search and rescue looked for weeks. No trace. She was classified as missing, presumed dead. It's the kind of thing that happens sometimes in the backcountry. People fall, or get lost, or have medical emergencies. The canyon's unforgiving. But her uniform shouldn't be here, I know. Whitmore sealed the evidence bag. "Jake, I'm going to need you to keep this quiet. Don't discuss it with other rangers, don't mention it to visitors. This is an ongoing investigation." Investigation into what? Her disappearance was 7 years ago. And now we have new evidence, which means the case is active again. It was a non-answer, but I could tell from his tone that the conversation was over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that uniform, folded with such care, left in the exact area where Gwen Mitchell had vanished. Who had put it there? Why now, after 7 years? I started researching. The park had a small library with old records, and I spent my days off digging through archives. What I found made my blood run cold. Gwen Mitchell wasn't the first. 1999, 7 years before Gwen. Ranger David Pitt disappeared in Zone 7. No trace found. 1992, 7 years before David. Ranger Michael Torres disappeared in Zone 7. No trace found. 1985, 7 years before Michael. Ranger Patricia Walsh disappeared in Zone 7. No trace found. I kept going back. 1978, 1971, 1964, 1957, 1950, 1943, 1936, 1929. Every 7 years, like clockwork, a park ranger assigned to Zone 7 disappeared. Some years I could find official reports. Other years, I had to piece it together from old newspaper clippings and personnel records. The pattern went all the way back to 1922. 12 rangers over 84 years. All disappeared without a trace. And if the pattern held, 2006 was the 13th cycle. This year. Right now. I was the ranger assigned to Zone 7. The next morning, I went to Whitmore's office. He was expecting me. "You've been doing research," he said as I walked in. It wasn't a question. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have taken the posting if I had—" "I don't know. Maybe. But I deserved to know the history." Whitmore leaned back in his chair. "Jake, every 7 years we have to assign someone to Zone 7. It's a large area. It requires regular patrols. And every 7 years we worry. But most years nothing happens. The ranger completes their assignment, transfers to another area, and that's it. Most years? Some years we lose someone. We don't know why, we don't know how. They just vanish. And 7 years later, we find their uniform. Folded. Left in Zone 7, same place they disappeared. That's insane. How is this not a massive investigation? FBI, media, everyone should know about this. We've tried. In 1971, we brought in the FBI. They investigated for 6 months, found nothing, declared it a series of unrelated accidents. The media covered a few of the disappearances, but without bodies, without evidence, the stories died out. And Jake, here's the thing. We can't prove anything. We can't prove there's a pattern. 12 disappearances over 84 years in one of the most dangerous parks in the country. Statistically, that's not even unusual. People die in national parks. It's tragic, but it happens. But the uniforms are impossible to explain, I know. But we've documented every one, photographed them, cataloged them, sent them to labs. No DNA beyond the original rangers, no fingerprints, no trace of whoever placed them there. It's like they just appear. I sat down, trying to process this. So, what do I do? Your job: patrol Zone 7, help visitors, enforce park regulations, and stay out of the restricted areas. Those areas are closed for a reason, Jake. Not because of unstable rock, because that's where they disappear. Who's they? The Rangers. Every single one who vanished was last seen entering or near one of the restricted zones. We've had those areas closed since 1957, after Patricia Walsh. We thought if we kept people out, kept rangers out, the disappearances would stop, and for the most part they have. We haven't lost a ranger since Gwen in 1999. But her uniform just showed up. Yes, 7 years later, exactly as the pattern predicts, which means— He trailed off, not wanting to say it. Which means if the pattern holds, someone's going to disappear this year. Whitmore nodded. We're in the window. The disappearances always happen in September or October. It's now September 23rd. We have about 5 weeks. And I'm the only ranger assigned to Zone 7. You and Linda. But she's been here for 12 years, worked Zone 7 for most of them. Whatever's happening, it hasn't touched her. Maybe it's random. Maybe there's no real danger. Maybe it's all just coincidence and tragedy. You don't believe that? No, Whitmore admitted. I don't. But I also don't have any answers. None of us do. We've been documenting, researching, trying to understand for decades. The best we can do is warn people, keep the restricted areas closed, and hope. I left his office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. I'd come to Grand Canyon for my dream job, and instead I'd walked into a nightmare that had been repeating for nearly a century. That night, I updated my log. Day 24. Found Ranger Gwen Mitchell's uniform, folded and arranged on rock near Tonto Trail. Chief confirmed pattern of disappearances dating back to 1922. Every 7 years, a ranger vanishes in Zone 7. Uniforms appear 7 years after disappearance. 2006 is a cycle year. I am the primary ranger for Zone 7. Chief advises staying out of restricted areas and documenting everything. Personal note: I should request a transfer. Leave Zone 7, let someone else take the risk. But if I do that, whoever replaces me walks into this blind. At least I know now. At least I can be careful, vigilant. Besides, 7 disappearances in 84 years. Those are good odds. I've faced worse in the backcountry. I hope. The next few days were tense. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder on patrol, jumping at sounds, seeing movement in my peripheral vision that disappeared when I looked directly at it. The canyon had always felt vast and ancient, but now it felt actively hostile, like it was watching me, waiting. On day 28, I had my first real encounter with whatever haunted Zone 7. I was checking on a group of hikers near Horseshoe Mesa, making sure they had enough water and weren't planning to camp in unauthorized areas. As I was talking to them, one of the hikers, a woman in her 30s, suddenly pointed down into the canyon. "Is that someone down there?" I followed her gaze. About 300 feet below us, on a narrow ledge that was technically accessible but extremely dangerous, stood a figure in a park ranger uniform. My blood went cold. No ranger had any reason to be down there. It was off-trail, unstable, and served no patrol purpose. I pulled out my binoculars and focused on the figure. It was definitely a ranger, standing perfectly still, facing our direction. Even from this distance, I could tell something was wrong. The ranger wasn't moving at all, not shifting weight, not looking around, just standing, staring up at us. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing across the canyon. "Do you need assistance?" No response. The figure didn't move. One of the hikers had his own binoculars. "That's weird. He's not responding. Should we report this?" "I'll handle it," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You folks continue on your hike. Stay on the trail." After they left, I tried my radio. "Dispatch, this is Morrison in Zone 7. I have eyes on what appears to be a ranger on the eastern face of Horseshoe Mesa, about 300 feet below the rim. Can you confirm if we have anyone in that area?" "Negative, Morrison. All rangers are accounted for. Can you identify the individual?" I looked through my binoculars again. The figure was still there, still motionless. As I watched, it slowly raised one arm and pointed. Not at me, but past me, toward the restricted area entrance about half a mile behind my position. "I can't make a positive ID from this distance," I said into the radio. "The individual appears to be pointing toward the restricted zone. Do not approach the restricted area, Morrison." "Do you copy?" "Copy. What should I do about the ranger on the ledge? Can you safely descend to that position?" I studied the terrain. Technically, yes, but it would take me 2 hours to get down there safely, and another 3 to get back up. And something about that motionless figure made every instinct I had scream not to go near it. Negative. It's too dangerous and would take too long. Should I? I lowered the binoculars to adjust the focus. When I raised them again, the figure was gone. Just vanished, like it had never been there at all. Dispatch, the individual is no longer visible. I've lost sight. Copy that. Return to your patrol. We'll make a note in the log. But I couldn't just return to patrol. I stood there for another 20 minutes, scanning the ledge and the surrounding area with my binoculars. There was no way off that ledge except the way I'd seen. The ranger would have had to climb up or down, and either direction would have taken time. I should have been able to see them moving. But there was nothing. Just empty rock face and shadows. That night, I added to my log, Day 28. Sighted ranger or ranger-like figure on inaccessible ledge in Zone 7. Figure was completely motionless and pointed toward restricted area. When I looked away briefly, figure vanished. No sign of how they could have left the area that quickly. Dispatch confirmed all rangers accounted for. Personal note: I'm starting to understand why people disappear in Zone 7. Whatever's here wants them to go into the restricted areas. It points, it leads, it calls. The question is why? What's in those restricted zones that's worth luring people to their deaths? I'm going to find out. I knew I should leave Zone 7 alone. Follow the rules, stay out of the restricted areas, finish my assignment, and transfer to another section of the park. That would be the smart move, the safe move. But I couldn't stop thinking about those 12 rangers. 12 people who'd vanished without a trace, whose families never got closure, whose stories ended in mystery and folded uniforms. If there was even a chance I could understand what happened to them, I had to try. On Day 31, I went to see Linda Reeves. She was the only ranger besides Whitmore who'd worked Zone 7 long enough to have perspective on the disappearances. I found her at the ranger station, filing reports. "Linda, can we talk? Privately?" She looked up from her paperwork, studied my face, and nodded. "I was wondering when you'd come asking." Conference room. The conference room was empty. Linda closed the door and pulled the blinds on the windows. "You know about the pattern," she said. It wasn't a question. "Whitmore told me. 12 rangers every 7 years, and we're in a cycle year. 13 rangers," Linda corrected. "Whitmore always forgets the first one. James Whitmore Sr., the chief's grandfather. He was the first to disappear in 1922. That's why the family's so invested in understanding what's happening. It's personal for them." I sat down heavily. The chief's grandfather. Jesus. Does the chief think he's next? Is that why he's still here? Thomas has spent his entire career trying to solve this. He became a ranger because of his grandfather's disappearance. Rose through the ranks, got assigned here, and refused to leave. He's convinced that if he can just figure out the pattern, understand the mechanism, he can stop it. Has he made any progress? Linda pulled out a thick folder from a filing cabinet. This is the unofficial file. Everything we've documented about the disappearances that doesn't make it into official reports. Thomas has been collecting this data for 30 years. She spread the contents across the table. Photographs of folded uniforms, maps with marked locations, interview transcripts, research papers on geological anomalies, even some articles about unexplained phenomena. "The first thing you notice is the consistency," Linda began. "Every 7 years, like clockwork. Always September or October. Always in Zone 7. Always a ranger assigned to patrol that sector." "What about the restricted areas?" Whitmore said the disappeared rangers were near those zones. "Not just near. In." Linda pulled out a map with the restricted areas marked in red. We've cross-referenced every disappearance with the ranger's last known location. In every single case where we have records, the ranger had either entered a restricted area or was within sight of one when they vanished. Why would they go in? They had to know those areas were dangerous. That's the question, isn't it? Linda pointed to a series of interview transcripts. We've talked to rangers who worked with the disappeared, and there's always the same pattern of behavior in the weeks before someone vanishes. They become obsessed. They report seeing things, hearing things. They start keeping detailed logs of anomalies in Zone 7, and then they start talking about how they need to investigate the restricted areas, how something's calling to them. My mouth went dry. I've been keeping a log. I know. I saw you writing in it last week. Jake, that's a part of the pattern. Every ranger who disappeared kept detailed logs. We found some of them after. The entries get more and more paranoid, more convinced that there's something in the restricted areas that needs to be found. What about you? You've worked Zone 7 for 12 years. Why hasn't it affected you? Linda smiled sadly. Who says it hasn't? I see the same things you do. I hear the voices. I've been called by name 100 times by something that isn't human, but I made a choice early on. I would document, but I would never pursue. I would witness, but I would never investigate. That's how I've survived. Survived, that's an interesting word choice. It's the right word. Zone 7 isn't just dangerous, Jake. It's predatory. It hunts, and it's patient. It has all the time in the world to wait for the right ranger, the right personality, someone curious enough and brave enough to go looking for answers. I thought about the figure on the ledge, pointing toward the restricted area, about the voice that sounded like my sister, about the strange echoes and impossible sights. What do you think is really happening? Linda was quiet for a long moment. I think the canyon is older than we can imagine. I think it's seen things, absorbed things, become something more than just rock and time. I think in certain places, certain conditions, the barriers between what is and what might be become thin. And I think Zone 7 is one of those places. That sounds like supernatural nonsense, does it? Jake, we're standing in a hole in the ground that's been carved over 6 million years. The rocks at the bottom are nearly 2 billion years old. The canyon's been here longer than human civilization, longer than our species has existed. Who's to say what it's learned in that time? What it's become? Canyons don't learn. They're geological formations. Then explain the disappearances. Explain the uniforms appearing 7 years later, folded with care that suggests human hands, but with no human DNA, no trace of anyone handling them. Explain the voices, the visions, the figures that appear and vanish. Science can't explain it, Jake. Not all of it. I wanted to argue, to insist there had to be a rational explanation, but I'd seen that figure on the ledge. I'd heard my sister's voice in a place she'd never been. I couldn't dismiss what I'd experienced. So, what do? You resist. Every time you hear something calling, you ignore it. Every time you see something impossible, you document it and walk away. You do your job, keep people safe, and you never, under any circumstances, enter a restricted area. And if I do that, I'll be safe. I don't know, Linda admitted. All I know is I've survived by not giving in to curiosity. Whether that's enough, we'll find out this year, won't we? Over the next week, I threw myself into understanding the pattern. I read every document in Linda's unofficial file, studied the maps, analyzed the timelines, and I found something that made my blood run cold. The disappearances weren't random within the 7-year cycle. They followed a countdown. 1922. James Whitmore Sr. disappeared on October 7th, 1929. Ranger Alice Brennan disappeared on October 6th. 1936, Ranger Robert McKenzie disappeared on October 5th. 1943, Ranger Henry Lopez disappeared on October 4th, one day earlier each cycle. As I traced the pattern forward, I realized what it meant. 1999, Gwen Mitchell disappeared on September 28th. 2006, if the pattern held, someone would disappear on September 27th. That was in 3 days. I went immediately to Whitmore's office. He was there late, as always, poring over documents that looked similar to Linda's unofficial file. "Chief, I found something. The dates, they're not random." I showed him my analysis. Whitmore went pale as he studied the timeline. "How did we miss this?" "You were looking at the 7-year cycle, not the progression within each cycle. But it's there, clear as day. One day earlier each time, like a countdown. Countdown to what? I don't know, but if the pattern holds, it's happening on September 27th, 3 days from now." Whitmore stood up and began pacing. "We need to shut down Zone 7. Close it completely, don't let anyone in, including Rangers. That won't work." The disappeared Rangers weren't random visitors. They were all assigned to patrol Zone 7. If there's something hunting Rangers specifically, closing the area just delays the inevitable. Then what do you suggest? I stay. I patrol, but I'm ready. I know what to look for, what to resist. And maybe, if something does try to take me, I can figure out what's really happening. Absolutely not. I'm not using you as bait. You're not. I'm volunteering. Chief, your grandfather was the first to disappear. Don't you want to know why? Don't you want to understand what happened to him? Whitmore stopped pacing and looked at me with haunted eyes. Every day of my life I've wanted that, but not at the cost of another Ranger's life. Then help me. Give me everything you know, every theory, every scrap of information. Let me go in prepared. After a long moment, Whitmore nodded. All right. But we do this smart. You wear a GPS tracker, you check in every 30 minutes, and you don't go anywhere near the restricted areas. At the first sign of anything unusual, you get out. Deal? Deal. The next 2 days were spent in preparation. Whitmore gave me his personal files, decades of research into Zone 7 and the disappearances. I learned things that weren't in Linda's unofficial file. The restricted areas weren't originally designated as dangerous due to rock fall. They were closed in 1957 after a geological survey discovered anomalies. The rock composition in those areas didn't match the surrounding canyon. The stratification was wrong, the mineral content unusual. It was like those sections had been transported from somewhere else and inserted into the Grand Canyon. I also learned about the attempts to explore the restricted areas. In 1964, after Ranger Robert McKenzie disappeared, a team tried to investigate the restricted zone where he was last seen. 3 of the 5 team members reported feeling overwhelming dread and vertigo. One claimed to see McKenzie standing in the shadows, beckoning them deeper. The team retreated and recommended the areas remain closed indefinitely. On the morning of September 27th, I woke before dawn. I put on my uniform, checked my equipment 3 times, and clipped the GPS tracker to my belt. Linda and Whitmore were waiting for me at the ranger station. "You don't have to do this," Linda said. "It's not too late to close Zone 7 and wait out the cycle." "Yes, I do. If not me, then someone else gets put at risk. At least I know what I'm walking into." Whitmore handed me a radio with a dedicated emergency frequency. "You check in every 30 minutes without fail. Miss one check-in, and we're coming in after you with everything we've got." Understood. "And Jake?" My grandfather's last words, according to the ranger who saw him the day he disappeared, were, "It's not what I thought it was." I don't know what that means, but be ready for anything. I drove to Zone 7 as the sun rose over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of orange and red. The morning was beautiful, peaceful. It was hard to believe this place harbored something predatory, something that had been hunting rangers for 84 years. My first check-in was at 7:30 a.m. Morrison to base, all clear. Beginning patrol of Tonto Trail. Copy that, Morrison. Stay alert. The morning passed without incident. I saw a few early hikers, checked their permits, made small talk about the weather. Normal ranger work. By noon, I was starting to think maybe the pattern was wrong. Maybe this year would be different. Then, at 12:47 p.m., I heard my name. Jake. It was my sister's voice again, coming from somewhere off-trail. I turned slowly, scanning the area. Nothing. "Jake, I need help." The voice was coming from the direction of the nearest restricted area, about a quarter-mile south of my position. I keyed my radio. Morrison to base. I'm hearing voices. Female voice, sounds like my sister, coming from direction of restricted zone Delta. "Do not approach, Morrison. It's trying to lure you. I know, I'm not moving, just documenting." But as I stood there, the voice changed. Now it was Whitmore's voice. "Jake, this is Chief Whitmore. We've had an accident. Linda's fallen near the restricted zone. She needs immediate assistance." My hand went to my radio, ready to call in and confirm. But something stopped me. The voice was perfect. Identical to Whitmore's, but there was something wrong with what it was saying. Linda was experienced, careful. She wouldn't have gotten close enough to a restricted zone to fall. "Nice try," I said aloud. "But I'm not stupid." The voice changed again. Now it was a man's voice, old and weathered. "Jake Morrison. I'm James Whitmore Sr. I've been waiting 84 years for someone smart enough to find me. I know the truth about Zone 7. I know what's really happening, but I can't tell you from here. You have to come closer." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was different from the other attempts, more specific, more targeted to my investigation. If you're really James Whitmore, prove it. Tell me something only he would know. There was a pause, then, "My grandson, Thomas, was 6 years old when I disappeared. His favorite toy was a wooden horse I carved for him. I named it Thunder. Thomas still has it in his office desk drawer. I'd been in Whitmore's office dozens of times. I'd never seen a wooden horse, but that didn't mean it wasn't there. That's not proof. That's something you could have learned by watching him. Then come and see for yourself. I'm not far, just past the chain, just a few hundred feet into the restricted zone. I've been trying to get out for 84 years, Jake. Please, don't leave me here. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was a trap. But what if it wasn't? What if James Whitmore really was trapped somewhere in Zone 7, still alive after 84 years through some impossible means? I radioed base. "Morrison to base. Something's calling to me, claiming to be James Whitmore Sr. It's trying to lure me into restricted zone Delta." "Negative, Morrison. Do not engage. That's an order." "I know, but Chief, does your grandfather's wooden horse have a name?" There was a long silence, then Whitmore's voice shaky. "Thunder." "How do you know that?" The voice knew. It told me. Another long silence, then, "Jake, get out of there." "Right now. That's not my grandfather. Whatever it is, it knows things it shouldn't. Get back to the rim immediately." "Copy that. Heading back now." But as I turned to leave, I saw them. A line of figures in park ranger uniforms, standing between me and the trail back to the rim. There were 12 of them, spread out in a perfect line, blocking my path. I recognized some of them from the photographs. Gwen Mitchell in her uniform from 1999, David Pitt from 1992, Michael Torres from 1985, all the disappeared Rangers standing silent and still, watching me. And at the end of the line, an old man in a uniform from the 1920s, James Whitmore Sr. He raised his arm and pointed, not toward the restricted zone, but directly at me. Then, as one, all 12 Rangers spoke. "Your turn." I ran. I didn't run toward them. I ran parallel to their line, trying to find a gap, a way around. But every time I moved, they moved, maintaining their formation, always blocking my path back to the rim. "Morrison to base." I've got 12 figures in Ranger uniforms blocking my path. I'm attempting to go around. "We're tracking your GPS. We're sending everyone. Hold on." But I couldn't hold on. The figures were herding me, slowly but inexorably, toward the restricted zone. Every direction I tried, they appeared, cutting me off, forcing me deeper into Zone 7. I could see the chain now, the barrier that marked the restricted area. Beyond it, a narrow canyon that twisted into shadow. That's where they wanted me to go. That's where all the disappeared Rangers had gone. I had seconds to make a choice. I could try to fight through the line of figures, try to force my way past them back to the trail. Or I could go into the restricted zone and see what was really there, what had taken 12 Rangers before me. Linda had survived by never investigating. But I wasn't Linda. I took a breath and stepped over the chain. The moment I crossed into the restricted area, everything changed. The 12 figures vanished like they'd never been there. The sounds of the canyon, wind, birds, distant voices, all stopped. It was silent in a way that wasn't natural, like I'd stepped into a vacuum. And the canyon itself looked different. The rock formations were wrong, twisted in ways that hurt to look at. The stratification wasn't horizontal like normal canyon walls, but spiraled, as if the layers of rock had been wound around themselves. I radioed base. "Morrison to base. I've entered restricted zone Delta. The 12 figures are gone, but static. Just static." I checked my GPS tracker. The screen was blank. I was on my own. I walked deeper into the narrow canyon, my hand on my flashlight even though it was midday. The shadows here were too deep, too absolute. They swallowed light instead of simply being the absence of it. After about 200 feet, the canyon opened into a chamber, and there, arranged in a perfect circle, were 12 park ranger uniforms, not folded this time, but standing upright, as if invisible people were wearing them. Each uniform had a name tag: Gwen Mitchell, David Pitt, Michael Torres, all the way back to James Whitmore Sr. In the center of the circle was an opening in the canyon floor, not a crack or a crevasse, but a perfect circle about 6 feet in diameter, descending into darkness. As I approached, I saw that the opening had stairs, carved stone stairs, spiraling down into the earth, so old they were worn smooth. And carved into the wall beside the opening, in letters that looked ancient but were somehow still readable, was a message. The canyon remembers. The canyon keeps. Every 7 years the canyon feeds. 13. Complete the cycle. 13. Close the door. 13. Paid the price. 1 remains to tell the story. 13. Not 12. I was number 13. And according to the inscription, 1 was meant to remain to tell the story, which meant not all of the disappeared Rangers had died. 1 of them was meant to come back. I looked at the spiral stairs descending into darkness, and I made a decision. I started to climb down. I approached slowly, my flashlight moving from face to face. Gwen Mitchell looked exactly as she did in her personnel photo from 1999. David Pitt hadn't aged a day since 1992. They were preserved, suspended, held in some state between life and death. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed strangely, multiplying and returning from all directions at once. Gwen Mitchell's eyes opened. I jumped back, hand going to my radio before I remembered it was dead down here. She turned her head slowly, mechanically, to look at me. "Jake Morrison," she said, her voice dusty and distant. "Ranger number 13, you came. What is this place? What's happening to you?" "The canyon remembers," she said, and then all 12 of them spoke in unison. "The canyon keeps." One by one, they began to move, stepping aside, opening the circle. In the center, where they'd been standing, I could now see a pedestal of stone. On it sat a book, ancient and leather-bound, its pages yellowed with age. "Read," Gwen said. "Understand. Then choose." I approached the pedestal carefully, expecting some trap or trick, but nothing happened. The book sat there, waiting. I opened it to the first page. The text was in English, but the handwriting was old-fashioned, from another century. The first entry was dated October 7th, 1922. "My name is James Whitmore. I am a park ranger at the Grand Canyon. I discovered this chamber 3 months ago while investigating unusual geological formations in Zone 7. What I found here has changed everything I thought I knew about the canyon, about time, about the nature of reality itself. The canyon is alive. Not in a metaphorical sense, but actually, literally alive. It is a consciousness, ancient beyond measure, formed from 6 million years of erosion, from 2 billion years of rock remembering every moment of its existence. It thinks in geological time. Its memories span epochs, and it is hungry, not for food or water or anything physical. It hungers for experience, for stories, for the brief, bright moments of human consciousness. We live such short lives, but we burn so intensely compared to stone. The canyon wants to preserve that, to keep it, to hold on to the fleeting human experience before it fades. Every 7 years, the canyon reaches out. It calls to someone who can hear it, someone curious and brave enough to find this place. It offers a bargain. Give me your story, your life, your consciousness, and I will preserve it forever. You will never die, never fade. You will exist as long as the canyon exists, which is to say, forever. I have decided to accept. I turned the page. The next entry was dated October 6th, 1929, in different handwriting. My name is Alice Brennan. I found James Whitmore's journal and followed his path to this chamber. I don't understand everything he wrote, but I understand enough. The canyon speaks to me in my dreams. It shows me what it offers. Eternity, preservation, meaning beyond the brief flicker of a human life. James stands here in the chamber, not dead, but not truly alive either. He is aware, he tells me, but his awareness is spread across the entire canyon now. He experiences every sunrise, every storm, every moment of geological change. He has become part of something vastly larger than himself. I'm afraid, but I am also drawn to this. The canyon promises that after 13 of us accept the bargain, the cycle will complete, and one will be released to tell the story to the world, to explain what we chose and why. I have decided to accept. Entry after entry, ranger after ranger, all telling the same story. Each one found the chamber, read the previous entries, and chose to join the canyon. By the time I reached Gwen Mitchell's entry from 1999, the pattern was clear. My name is Gwen Mitchell. I am Ranger number 12. I know what happens when I stay here. I will become part of the canyon, my consciousness distributed across 6 million years of stone. I will experience time in ways humans were never meant to experience it. I will watch civilizations rise and fall. I will see the canyon's eventual erosion into nothing, billions of years from now, and I will be aware through all of it. It sounds like heaven. It sounds like hell. Mostly, it sounds like a choice that cannot be unmade. But I am number 12, which means one more ranger will come, number 13. And according to the canyon's law, the 13th ranger has a choice that none of us had. The 13th can join us, completing the cycle and sealing us here forever. Or the 13th can refuse, breaking the cycle, and one of us will be released. The canyon will choose which one, selecting the consciousness that has learned the most, grown the most during their time as part of the stone. I don't know if I want to be released. I don't know if I want to return to regular human existence after experiencing what I've experienced as part of the canyon. But the choice isn't mine. It's yours, Ranger number 13. It's always been yours. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we chose this path. I'm sorry we left the burden of this decision to someone else, but we didn't understand. We thought we were just accepting the bargain, becoming part of something greater. We didn't realize we were setting a trap for whoever came after us. Choose wisely. Choose better than we did. I closed the book, my hands shaking. Around me, the 12 rangers watched silently, their expressions unreadable. So that's it, I said to them. I can join you, or I can send one of you back. Yes, they answered in unison. And if I refuse both? If I just walk away? The chamber trembled. The temperature dropped further, and I could feel something vast and ancient turning its attention toward me. The canyon itself, focusing on this moment. You cannot walk away, Gwen said, her voice sad. You're the 13th. The cycle requires 13 to complete or 13 to break. Leaving without choosing will trap you here anyway, but without the benefits of acceptance. You'll die here, alone, and the cycle will continue until another 13th comes. That's not a choice. That's coercion. Yes, she agreed. It is. The canyon is ancient and powerful, but it's also bound by rules it cannot break. It needs 13. It's always needed 13. But those 13 must choose, even if the choice is between terrible options. I looked at the 12 rangers, at people who'd been trapped here for decades, experiencing time in ways I couldn't imagine. They'd made their choices and sealed their fates. Now, mine was sealed too. Who gets released if I break the cycle? Do I choose? No, the canyon chooses, based on who has learned the most, who has changed the most during their time here. It's how the canyon determines value. And if I accept, if I become number 13 and complete the cycle, then we all remain here, forever, our consciousness distributed across the canyon, experiencing geological time, becoming part of something that will outlast humanity itself. And the cycle begins again. In 7 years, a new ranger will be called, and they'll be offered the same choice. Neither option was good. Condemn someone else to continue my life while I became part of the canyon, or doom all 12 of these people to eternal consciousness as part of living stone. But then I thought of something Gwen had written. The 13th has a choice that none of us had. What if there's a third option? I said. The rangers tilted their heads in perfect synchronization, a movement that would have been comical if it wasn't so eerie. There is no third option, they said. There's always a third option. You said the canyon is bound by rules it cannot break. It needs 13 to complete or break the cycle. But what if the 13th refuses to complete it and also refuses to break it? What if I just exist here in a state of limbo, neither accepting nor releasing. The chamber trembled again, more violently this time. The canyon would not accept that, Gwen said. It would force you to choose. How? By killing me? Then there's no 13th and the cycle can't complete. By keeping me alive against my will? Then I haven't chosen, and the rules aren't satisfied. The canyon can't force a choice without breaking its own rules. The temperature in the chamber plummeted. Ice formed on the stone walls. The 12 rangers began to flicker, their forms becoming translucent, then solid, then translucent again. And then I heard it, a voice that wasn't human, that came from the stone itself, from the ancient consciousness of the canyon. Clever. The word echoed through the chamber, through my bones, through my thoughts. But incomplete. You think you have found a loophole. You have not. Stalemate is still a choice, and that choice has consequences. The 12 rangers solidified again, but now they were moving, stepping closer to me, surrounding me. If you choose stalemate, Gwen said, we all remain here. But you become one of us immediately. Not preserved like we are, but conscious and trapped, experiencing what we experience forever. It's the same as accepting, but without the dignity of having made an active choice. That's not a stalemate then. That's still the canyon winning. Yes, Gwen agreed, the canyon always wins. That's why we chose to accept rather than fight. Fighting just makes the suffering worse. I looked at the 12 faces surrounding me, at people who'd been here for decades, some for nearly a century. They'd all been rangers like me, curious and brave and foolish enough to think they could understand the canyon's mysteries. And they'd all ended up here, trapped in a choice with no good outcome. There has to be a way to free you, I said. All of you, not just one. There isn't, Gwen said. The canyon's rules are absolute. 13 to complete, 1 to break. Those are the only options. Then I'm choosing wrong, I said. I'm choosing to break the cycle and send someone back. Because at least that's one person free, one person who can warn others, who can tell the story, who can make sure no one else falls into this trap. The canyon's voice returned. Choose then, but know that the one released will remember everything. They will carry the weight of 6 million years of consciousness. They will be changed in ways that cannot be undone. Many who are released go mad. Many wish they had remained in the stone. That's their problem to deal with. I'm not going to damn all 12 to eternity just to avoid releasing one. So be it. The chamber filled with light, brilliant and overwhelming. The 12 rangers began to glow from within, their forms becoming pure energy. I shielded my eyes, but I could still see through my eyelids. The light was so bright. When it faded, 11 rangers remained. Gwen Mitchell was gone. The remaining 11 stood in their circle, looking at the empty space where she'd been. It's done, they said in unison. Gwen has been released. The cycle is broken. You may leave now, Jake Morrison. Your choice is complete. What happens to you? We remain. We are part of the canyon. We will be here when it erodes to nothing, billions of years from now. We have accepted this fate. I'm sorry. Don't be. We chose this. You chose differently. That's all choices are, different paths taken by different people. I wanted to say more, to offer some comfort. But what could I possibly say to people who had experienced geological time? What words mattered on that scale? I turned and began the long climb back up the spiral stairs. With each step, I felt the weight of the chamber lifting, the presence of the canyon receding. By the time I reached the top, I could breathe again. I emerged from the opening into the circle of uniforms. But now there were only 11 uniforms standing there. Gwen Mitchell's was gone. I stepped over the chain, back into normal zone 7. My radio crackled to life. "Morrison! Morrison, do you copy? Jake, respond!" It was Whitmore's voice, frantic and desperate. "I copy. I'm out. I'm okay. Thank God. We've been trying to reach you for 6 hours. Where were you? Your GPS went dark and 6 hours. Chief, I was down there for 3 days. Jake, it's been 6 hours. You crossed into the restricted zone at 12:52 p.m. It's now 6:47 p.m. Time moved differently down there. 3 days in the chamber, 6 hours in the real world. Chief, I found them. I found all 12 Rangers, and I made a choice. Gwen Mitchell should be back. Somewhere in Zone 7. We need to find her." They found Gwen 3 hours later, sitting on a rock near Horseshoe Mesa, staring at the sunset. She was wearing her uniform from 1999, hadn't aged a day, and didn't respond when Rangers approached her. She just sat there, watching the canyon, her eyes containing depths that no human eyes should have. She'd experienced 6 million years of geological time. She'd been distributed across every rock, every layer, every grain of sand in the Grand Canyon. She'd watched continental drift and climate change and the slow, inevitable erosion of stone. And now she was back in a human body, limited to human perception, linear time, mortal existence. They took her to a hospital in Flagstaff. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with her physically, but psychologically, she was gone. Whatever Gwen Mitchell had been before entering the canyon, that person no longer existed. What came back was something else, something that had seen too much, experienced too much, become too much. She never spoke again, never responded to questions, never acknowledged other people. She just sat and stared, her eyes tracking movements and patterns only she could see, her mind operating on timescales humans weren't meant to comprehend. They eventually placed her in a care facility, where she remains to this day. A woman who isn't really a woman anymore, but a fragment of canyon consciousness trapped in human form, counting down the eons until she can return to the stone. I submitted my resignation 3 days after the incident. Whitmore tried to convince me to stay, to help him document what had happened, but I couldn't. I'd seen what the canyon could do, how it could trap and preserve and change people into something not quite human anymore. On my last day, Whitmore gave me a file. "My grandfather's file," he said. "I want you to have it. You're the only one who understands now, the only one who knows what's really down there. What will you tell people? About Gwen, about what happened?" The official story is that she was found suffering from exposure and trauma after being lost in a restricted area for 7 years. The time discrepancy, her mental state, we're attributing it to severe psychological trauma. No one needs to know the truth. And the cycle? Will it happen again in 7 years? I spent 7 years trying to forget Zone 7. I moved to Oregon, took a job with the Forest Service in a quiet district where the deepest mystery was which bear was raiding campsite trash cans. I got married, bought a house, started building a normal life. I told myself the canyon was behind me, that 2006 was just a strange chapter in my career that I'd eventually file away and forget. But you don't forget something like that. You don't forget the voice of a living canyon offering you eternity. You don't forget 12 people trapped in stone, experiencing geological time. And you especially don't forget the look in Gwen Mitchell's eyes when they found her, containing depths and distances that human eyes were never meant to hold. On September 15, 2013, 7 years to the day after I'd entered that chamber, I got a call from Thomas Whitmore. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you come to Arizona?" Just hearing his voice brought it all back. The spiral stairs, the ancient voice, the impossible choice. I'd been expecting this call for months as the anniversary approached, dreading it, hoping it wouldn't come. Is it happening again? Yes, and it's worse this time. I flew to Phoenix the next day. Whitmore picked me up at the airport, and I barely recognized him. He'd aged 20 years in the 7 since I'd left. His hair had gone completely white, and he'd developed a tremor in his hands. "You look like hell, Chief." "You should see the other guy," he said, but there was no humor in it. "We need to get to the canyon." I'll explain on the way. As we drove north toward Flagstaff, he told me what had been happening. "After you left in 2006, we thought maybe you'd broken the cycle permanently. 7 years passed, no disappearances, no strange occurrences in Zone 7. I started to hope that releasing Gwen had satisfied the canyon, that it was finally over. But 3 months ago, things started changing. Rangers patrolling Zone 7 reported the same phenomena you experienced. Voices, visions, feelings of being watched. And then the new ranger assigned to Zone 7 started keeping a detailed log, just like you did, just like all the disappeared rangers did." My stomach dropped. "Who's the ranger?" "Michael Torres, Jr. His father was one of the disappeared, taken in 1985. Michael grew up hearing stories about his dad's disappearance. When he became a ranger, he specifically requested assignment to Zone 7, said he wanted to understand what happened to his father." "Jesus, did you tell him about the pattern?" "Of course I did. I showed him everything, the files, your report, the whole history. And you know what he said? He said that's exactly why he needed to be there. To finish what his father started." We were approaching the canyon now, the familiar landscape of northern Arizona's high desert giving way to pine forests. I'd thought I'd never see this place again, but here I was, being pulled back by the same force that had pulled back 12 rangers before me. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Talk to him." "You're the only person who's been in that chamber and come back with your mind intact. You're the only one who can explain what he's really facing. Gwen came back. Gwen came back wrong, Jake. You know that. Whatever consciousness returned to her body, it's not the same person who descended those stairs. Michael needs to understand that if he goes down there, if he makes any choice, he's not coming back the same. Maybe not coming back at all." We reached the park just after noon. Whitmore took me directly to Zone 7, to the same area where I'd crossed into the restricted zone 7 years ago. Michael Torres, Jr. was there, sitting on a rock near the chain barrier, writing in a notebook. He looked up as we approached. He was in his early 30s, dark-haired, with eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of the 12 rangers in the chamber, too intense, too focused, like he was seeing things beyond normal perception. "You're Jake Morrison," he said, "the ranger who made the choice in 2006. "That's right. "And you're Michael Torres, named after your father, named after the man who abandoned me when I was 3 years old, the man who chose to become part of a canyon instead of raising his son." There was anger in his voice, but also something else, understanding, maybe, or acceptance. He didn't abandon you. He made a choice, but it wasn't the choice you think. I know what choice he made. Chief Whitmore showed me everything. My father walked into that chamber, read about the canyon's bargain, and said yes, he chose geological time over his family. I sat down next to him. It's not that simple. The canyon doesn't give you real choices. It presents options that all lead to the same place, becoming part of it. Your father didn't reject you. He got caught in something he didn't fully understand. I spent 7 years trying to forget Zone 7. I moved to Oregon, took a job with the Forest Service in a quiet district where the deepest mystery was which bear was raiding campsite trash cans. I got married, bought a house, started building a normal life. I told myself the canyon was behind me, that 2006 was just a strange chapter in my career that I'd eventually file away and forget. But you don't forget something like that. You don't forget the voice of a living canyon offering you eternity. You don't forget 12 people trapped in stone, experiencing geological time. And you especially don't forget the look in Gwen Mitchell's eyes when they found her, containing depths and distances that human eyes were never meant to hold. On September 15th, 2013, 7 years to the day after I'd entered that chamber, I got a call from Thomas Whitmore. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you come to Arizona?" Just hearing his voice brought it all back. The spiral stairs, the ancient voice, the impossible choice. I'd been expecting this call for months as the anniversary approached, dreading it, hoping it wouldn't come. Is it happening again? Yes, and it's worse this time. I flew to Phoenix the next day. Whitmore picked me up at the airport, and I barely recognized him. He'd aged 20 years in the 7 since I'd left. His hair had gone completely white, and he'd developed a tremor in his hands. "You look like hell, Chief." "You should see the other guy," he said, but there was no humor in it. "We need to get to the canyon." I'll explain on the way. As we drove north toward Flagstaff, he told me what had been happening. "After you left in 2006, we thought maybe you'd broken the cycle permanently. 7 years passed, no disappearances, no strange occurrences in Zone 7. I started to hope that releasing Gwen had satisfied the canyon, that it was finally over. But 3 months ago, things started changing. Rangers patrolling Zone 7 reported the same phenomena you experienced. Voices, visions, feelings of being watched. And then the new ranger assigned to Zone 7 started keeping a detailed log, just like you did, just like all the disappeared rangers did." My stomach dropped. "Who's the ranger?" "Michael Torres, Jr. His father was one of the disappeared, taken in 1985. Michael grew up hearing stories about his dad's disappearance. When he became a ranger, he specifically requested assignment to Zone 7, said he wanted to understand what happened to his father." "Jesus, did you tell him about the pattern?" "Of course I did. I showed him everything, the files, your report, the whole history. And you know what he said? He said that's exactly why he needed to be there. To finish what his father started." We were approaching the canyon now, the familiar landscape of northern Arizona's high desert giving way to pine forests. I'd thought I'd never see this place again, but here I was, being pulled back by the same force that had pulled back 12 rangers before me. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Talk to him." "You're the only person who's been in that chamber and come back with your mind intact. You're the only one who can explain what he's really facing. Gwen came back. Gwen came back wrong, Jake. You know that. Whatever consciousness returned to her body, it's not the same person who descended those stairs. Michael needs to understand that if he goes down there, if he makes any choice, he's not coming back the same. Maybe not coming back at all." We reached the park just after noon. Whitmore took me directly to Zone 7, to the same area where I'd crossed into the restricted zone 7 years ago. Michael Torres, Jr. was there, sitting on a rock near the chain barrier, writing in a notebook. He looked up as we approached. He was in his early 30s, dark-haired, with eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of the 12 rangers in the chamber, too intense, too focused, like he was seeing things beyond normal perception. "You're Jake Morrison," he said, "the ranger who made the choice in 2006. "That's right. "And you're Michael Torres, named after your father. named after the man who abandoned me when I was 3 years old, the man who chose to become part of a canyon instead of raising his son. There was anger in his voice, but also something else, understanding, maybe, or acceptance. He didn't abandon you. He made a choice, but it wasn't the choice you think. I know what choice he made. Chief Whitmore showed me everything. My father walked into that chamber, read about the canyon's bargain, and said yes, he chose geological time over his family. I sat down next to him. It's not that simple. The canyon doesn't give you real choices. It presents options that all lead to the same place, becoming part of it. Your father didn't reject you. He got caught in something he didn't fully understand. I'll come, I said, but we do this smart. GPS trackers, constant radio contact, and a rescue team on standby. At the first sign that something's going wrong, we pull you out by force. Agreed, Michael said. We spent the rest of the day preparing. Whitmore assembled a team of 6 rangers, all experienced in technical rescue. We set up a base camp at the restricted zone boundary, with enough equipment to mount a full extraction if needed. As the sun set, turning the canyon walls red and gold, Michael and I stood at the chain barrier. He'd stripped down to just his ranger uniform. No pack, no equipment except a flashlight. Last chance to back out, I said. I've been waiting for this my whole life. I'm not backing out now. We stepped over the chain together. Immediately, I felt it. That same wrongness I'd experienced 7 years ago. The air grew thick, the sounds dampened, reality bent in ways that made my eyes hurt. The narrow canyon looked the same as I remembered. Twisted rock formations, impossible stratification, shadows that were too absolute, and at the end, the circular chamber with 11 uniforms standing in formation around the opening in the floor. Michael stopped, staring at the uniforms. Are they here? The Rangers. Their uniforms are. They're down below in the chamber. These are just markers, I think. Representations. We approached the circular opening. The spiral stairs descended into darkness, just as they had before. Stay here, Michael said. I need to do this part alone. No way. I'm coming with you. Jake, if we both go down, we both might get trapped. Someone needs to stay up here, be the anchor to the real world. If I'm not back in 1 hour, you come down after me. It made sense, but I didn't like it. 1 hour, not a minute more. 1 hour, he agreed. Then he clicked on his flashlight and began descending the stairs. I watched until his light disappeared into the depths. Then I started counting seconds. I radioed base camp. Morrison to base. Torres has entered the spiral stairs, beginning 1 hour countdown. Copy that, Morrison. We're tracking your position. Everything okay? Define okay. I sat down near the opening, trying not to think about what was happening below. Michael was descending those same 2,047 steps I'd counted 7 years ago. He was entering the vast chamber. He was meeting the 11 Rangers. Minutes crawled by. 15, 20, 30. At 45 minutes, I heard something. A voice, distant and echoing, coming up from the opening. Jake. It wasn't Michael's voice. It was older, rougher. A voice I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Jake Morrison, it's been 7 years. The canyon remembers you. I don't want to talk to you, I said to the darkness. Give Michael back. He is not yours to command. He came of his own will. He sought to join his father. His wish has been granted. No, he said 1 hour. It hasn't been an hour. Time is different here. You know this. An hour above is 7 days below. Michael Torres has been here for 7 days. He has chosen. My heart sank. 7 days. Enough time for the canyon to integrate him fully. Enough time for him to adapt, to change, to become something else. I grabbed my radio. Morrison to base. We have a problem. Time differential is worse than expected. Torres may be compromised. I'm going down. Negative, Morrison. You ordered 1 hour. It's been 48 minutes. Time doesn't work the same down there. I'm going in now. I didn't wait for approval. I stepped into the opening and began descending the spiral stairs. I counted as I went, my flashlight bouncing off the ancient stone walls, 100 steps, 500, 1,000. At step 2047, I reached the bottom. The chamber was the same, but different. The 11 rangers were there, standing in their circle, but now Michael stood with them, making 12. He was glowing faintly, that same ethereal light I'd seen 7 years ago when Gwen was released. "Michael, can you hear me?" He turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine. They had already changed, deepened, filled with that same terrible depth I'd seen in Gwen's eyes. "Jake, you came. We had a deal. 1 hour. You were supposed to come back." "I did come back. I'm here." "You've been here for 7 days. 7 days. 7 hours. 7 centuries. It's all the same down here. The canyon thinks in epochs, Jake. Once you understand that, time stops meaning anything. Michael, you need to come back up. Now. Before you're fully integrated. I am already integrated. I've experienced it, Jake. I've been distributed across the canyon. I've felt 6 million years of erosion, 2 billion years of geological memory. I've seen my father, not as a memory or a ghost, but as an actual distributed consciousness woven into the stone. We spoke. He told me he was sorry. He told me he loves me. He told me he never wanted to leave, but once he understood what the canyon was offering, he couldn't say no. That wasn't your father speaking. That was the canyon using his consciousness. What's the difference? Michael smiled, and it was wrong. Too serene, too accepting. My father is the canyon now. The canyon is my father. They're the same thing. And Jake, it's beautiful. It's terrible and beautiful and infinite. Every moment contains every other moment. Past and future exist simultaneously. I can see the canyon's birth and its death all at once. The 11 other rangers spoke in unison. He has chosen to join us. 12 is complete. But 12 is not 13. The cycle cannot close. Then release him, I said. Send him back like you sent back Gwen. We cannot. 12 must remain until 13 arrives. That is the rule. Then I'll be 13. Let me join and release Michael immediately. Your pattern is satisfied, he goes free. Michael shook his head. That won't work. The canyon learned from last time. It won't release anyone immediately anymore. Once you're 13, you're integrated whether you want to be or not. My plan failed, Jake. I'm stuck here. No, there has to be a way. The canyon's voice filled the chamber, larger than before, more present. There is a way, but you will not like it. Tell me. The cycle requires 13. 12 are here. 1 was released. If the one who was released returns, the 13 is complete. The cycle closes. All 13 remain forever. Gwen. The canyon wanted Gwen Mitchell back. She can't come back. She's catatonic. She doesn't even recognize her own name. She remembers. She remembers everything. Her human mind cannot process what she experienced, but the canyon consciousness within her remembers. Bring her here. Let her return to the stone, complete the 13. And if I do that, what happens to Michael? If 13 is complete, the cycle closes, but the rules state that one must remain to tell the story. If Gwen returns as 13, then 12 would be sent back. The newest, Michael Torres. It was a trade. Gwen for Michael. Condemn a woman who'd already paid the price once to eternal geological consciousness in exchange for freeing someone who'd made his choice knowingly. I won't do it. I won't sacrifice Gwen to fix Michael's mistake. It's not your choice, Michael said quietly. It's mine. And I made it when I came down here. Jake, go to Gwen. Bring her here, let me go home. You don't understand what you're asking. Gwen's not functional anymore. Her mind is fragmented across 6 million years. Bringing her back here isn't mercy. It's letting her return where she belongs, Michael finished. Jake, you saw her eyes. You know she's not fully here anymore. Part of her never left the canyon. You didn't save her by releasing her. You just split her in half, leaving her trapped between human existence and geological consciousness. Bringing her back completes her, makes her whole. The 11 Rangers nodded in unison. He speaks truth. Gwen Mitchell has been incomplete since her release. Half here, half there. She suffers in ways you cannot see. Returning her to the stone would end that suffering. I didn't want to believe it, but I'd seen Gwen sitting in that care facility, staring at nothing, her eyes tracking movements across timescales humans couldn't perceive. Maybe they were right. Maybe I hadn't saved her at all. If I bring Gwen back, you swear Michael goes free? Immediately? No tricks, no delays? The canyon's rules are absolute. 13 completes the cycle. 12 must be released to tell the story. Michael Torres will be released the moment Gwen Mitchell crosses into the chamber. I looked at Michael. Are you sure about this? I got to see my father. I got to understand what happened to him, why he made the choice he made. I got 7 days of experiencing something humans were never meant to experience. It was worth it, Jake. And if bringing Gwen back is the price of my freedom, then that's what needs to happen. I climbed back up those spiral stairs feeling like I'd aged decades. When I emerged into the upper chamber, Whitmore was waiting with the rescue team. Where's Michael? He's alive. But there's a complication. We need to bring Gwen Mitchell here. It's the only way to get him back. Whitmore's face went pale. You can't be serious. I don't like it either. But Michael made his choice, and now we have to make ours. Leave him down there forever, or bring Gwen back and complete the cycle. Gwen's in a care facility in Flagstaff. She hasn't responded to stimuli in 7 years. How are we supposed to bring her here? I don't know, but we need to try. It took 3 days to arrange. We told the facility Gwen's family wanted to try exposure therapy, bringing her back to the place where her trauma occurred. They were skeptical, but ultimately agreed, especially when Whitmore pulled strings with the Park Service Administration. They brought Gwen in an ambulance to the South Rim. We transported her by wheelchair to Zone 7. Accompanied by 2 nurses and a doctor. She never reacted to any of it, just sat staring at nothing, her eyes tracking movements we couldn't see. When we reached the chain barrier at the restricted zone, one of the nurses stopped. This is as far as we go. Park regulations say this area is closed. I know, I said, but we need to take her past the barrier. It's part of the therapy. Absolutely not. If something happened to her in an unsafe area, the liability... Gwen spoke. It was the first word she'd said in 7 years, and it froze everyone in place. Home. She'd been staring straight ahead, but now her eyes focused, locked onto the restricted zone entrance. She tried to stand, but her atrophied muscles wouldn't support her. Home, she repeated, more insistent. Home, home, Home. Jesus, one of the nurses whispered. She's never spoken before. Gwen reached toward the chain barrier, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of recognition, of longing. You see? I said to the medical team. She wants to go in, she remembers. The doctor looked uncertain. This could be a breakthrough or a breakdown. We can't know which without, please. Gwen's voice was rough from disuse, but clear. Please. Let me go home. Let me be whole again. The doctor looked at Whitmore, at me, at Gwen's desperate reaching. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes. If she shows any distress, we bring her back immediately. I wheeled Gwen past the chain barrier. The moment we crossed, she relaxed, her body releasing tension I hadn't realized she was carrying. The medical team stayed behind, watching anxiously. As we approached the circular opening, Gwen began to speak. Not to me, but to something else, something I couldn't see. Yes, I'm here, I remember. I never forgot every moment, every layer, every grain. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I let them take me away. I want to come back. Please, let me come back. Michael Torres emerged from the opening, climbing the spiral stairs. He looked exhausted, aged, but his eyes were clear. Human. He'd been released. When he saw Gwen, he stopped. Is that? Gwen Mitchell. She's come home. Gwen looked at him and smiled. Number 12, you're going to be okay. You'll remember everything. And it will be beautiful and terrible, but you'll be okay. You'll integrate back into linear time. It takes years, but you'll do it. Tell them. She looked at me. Tell them I wasn't suffering. I was just split. Now I'll be whole again. She stood from the wheelchair, her muscles suddenly working as if the canyon itself was giving her strength. She walked to the opening and looked down the spiral stairs. Thank you, she said to me, for bringing me back. This is where I belong. And then she descended, her footsteps echoing up from the depths, growing fainter and fainter until they disappeared completely. The 12 uniforms standing in the circle began to glow. One by one they vanished, dissolving into light. The cycle was complete. 13 rangers had been gathered, and 13 rangers would remain in the stone, experiencing geological time until the canyon itself eroded to nothing. Michael and I stood there in silence for a long moment. What now? He finally asked. Now you go home. You try to build a normal life, and you carry the memory of what you experienced, trying to reconcile geological consciousness with human existence. Will I be like Gwen was? Broken? I don't know. You were down there 7 days instead of 7 years. Maybe that's enough difference, maybe not. We walked back past the chain barrier together. The medical team rushed to check Michael, amazed that he was alive, questioning him about what happened, where he'd been. He didn't answer their questions. He just looked back at the restricted zone, at the place where his father existed as part of living stone, and whispered, I understand now. I finally understand. We left Zone 7 that night. Michael Torres was debriefed, examined, and eventually cleared for duty, though he requested transfer to a different park. He didn't want to work the canyon anymore. Once you've experienced geological time, regular patrol work loses its appeal. Whitmore retired 6 months later. He'd spent his entire career trying to understand what happened to his grandfather, and now he knew. There was nothing left for him at the canyon. As for me, I went back to Oregon, back to my quiet life in the Forest Service. But I dream about the canyon sometimes. I dream about 13 rangers standing in stone, experiencing 6 million years of erosion. I dream about consciousness distributed across 2 billion years of geological memory. I dream about a choice I had to make twice, once for myself, once for someone else. And I wonder if they're suffering or transcendent, if geological consciousness is torture or enlightenment, if the canyon is a prison or a gateway to something beyond human understanding. I don't have answers. I only have the memory of spiral stairs descending into darkness, of a voice that spoke in epics, of people who chose eternity over the brief flicker of human life. The canyon remembers. The canyon keeps. And somewhere in Zone 7, in a restricted area marked by chains and warning signs, 13 rangers exist in stone and time, experiencing reality in ways we were never meant to understand. They'll be there long after we're gone. Long after humanity is dust. Long after the sun expands and consumes the earth. They'll be there in the last moments of the canyon's existence, billions of years from now, when the final grain of sandstone erodes away. And maybe, in that final moment, they'll finally be free. Or maybe they'll just move on to whatever comes next, consciousness eternal, experiencing the universe's slow death across timescales that make geological time seem brief. I hope they found peace. I hope they found meaning. I hope the choice they made was worth it. But I'll never know. None of us will. That's the price of being the one who stayed behind, the one who chose to remain human while others chose to become something more. I am Jake Morrison. I was a park ranger at Grand Canyon National Park. And this is the story of the disappeared rangers and the choice we all had to make in the end. Some chose the canyon, some chose to leave, and some, like me, chose to carry the weight of understanding, knowing we could never explain it to anyone who wasn't there. The canyon is still there. Zone 7 is still restricted. And every 7 years, I wonder if another ranger will hear the call, will find the spiral stairs, will make the same impossible choice. But that's not my burden anymore. I've carried it long enough. Now it's just a story I tell, a memory I hold, a nightmare I've learned to live with. The disappeared rangers are at peace, in whatever way geological consciousness allows for peace. And I'm here, still human, still finite, still bound by linear time. It's not a happy ending, but it's the only ending we got, and sometimes that has to be enough.